All right, so have you ever like been trying to buy something online during a big sale
Yeah.
and the website just
Yeah,
crashes?
totally. Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. Or like when an app is just so slow that you just want to chuck your phone across the room.
I know exactly what you mean.
That's where this thing called non-functional testing comes in.
Okay.
And it's basically like you said, it's not about whether the software like does what it should, that's the functional part.
Right.
It's about how well it does it. So,
Exactly. It's like with the car, right?
yeah.
Like a car that can get you from point A to point B.
Hmm.
I mean, it's functional,
Yeah.
but we want more these days.
Yeah, of course.
Like a smooth ride or fuel efficiency or like all the safety features.
Right, all that good stuff.
Exactly.
So it's those non-functional aspects.
Yeah, and software is the same way.
Okay, so that's kind of the big picture, right?
Yeah.
But let's break it down a little bit.
Okay.
I've got a bunch of sources that you sent over,
Right.
all about non-functional testing. Uh-huh.
And I guess our mission today is to
Okay.
extract all the really juicy, important bits.
And try to figure out why this even matters to people who, aren't coders or anything.
Absolutely, because it really does.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
to start off, let's just make sure we're all on the same page here.
Okay.
What is non-functional testing?
Yeah.
I mean, these sources have some pretty technical definitions.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as like
Okay.
evaluating all those parts of software
Uh-huh.
that affect the user experience, beyond just like
Right.
the basic functionality.
Okay. So not just like, does the button work?
Right.
But like, does it work smoothly and
Exactly.
quickly for like everyone every time?
Exactly. Yeah, it's all those things that make it a good experience.
Right.
For
Yeah.
example, like if you were building an online banking app or something,
Right.
the functional testing
Uh-huh.
would just be like, can you log in?
Right.
And can you transfer money? But non-functional testing
Uh-huh.
would look at like, you know how many people can log in at the same time
Right.
without the whole system crashing?
Right.
Or you know how quickly the transactions are processed
Yeah.
during like peak hours?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a really clear distinction.
Yeah.
And I guess this is where the so what factor comes in.
Right.
Because we all know that like buggy software is annoying,
Yeah.
but like slow or unreliable or like insecure software can be like,
A total deal breaker.
yeah, a total deal breaker. You
Yeah.
just give up.
And that's why this matters for everyone.
Right.
Even if you're not a coder,
Yeah.
like if you're evaluating software for work or something,
Uh-huh.
understanding this stuff helps you ask better questions,
Yeah.
make better choices.
Okay.
And even just as like a regular consumer,
Yeah.
knowing what to look for can save you so much frustration.
It's true. It's true because I think before I knew about this, I just assumed like slow websites and laggy apps
Right.
were just kind of like a fact of life.
Totally.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, you just deal with it.
Yeah.
And now I realize like, wait a minute, this is a testing issue.
Yeah.
Like someone dropped the ball here.
Exactly.
This should have been caught.
Yeah. And knowing that can empower you to demand better
Yes.
from the tech that you use.
Okay, so our sources are mentioning all these different parameters
Right.
for non-functional testing,
Yeah.
like security and usability,
Sure.
performance, and like a much more.
There's a lot.
Where do we even begin with all that?
Well, I mean, instead of just going through like a dry list,
Okay.
let's just pick a few that are like
Okay.
really universally relatable.
Okay.
So let's start with security,
Yeah.
since it's such a hot topic these days.
Security is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, data breaches and hacks are
all over the news.
constantly in the news.
All the time.
So in terms of like non-functional testing,
What would security testing actually involve?
so basically it's all about finding vulnerabilities
Okay.
and weaknesses, that attackers could exploit.
Uh-huh.
Think of it like a digital fortress or something.
Okay.
Security testing is like trying to find any cracks in the walls
Right.
or weak points in the defenses.
Okay.
So it involves like simulating attacks,
Okay.
testing for data leaks,
Uh-huh.
just generally making sure that the software
Yeah.
can withstand like a barrage of threats.
So it's almost like ethical hacking,
Yeah,
but like specifically focused on the software itself.
exactly.
Wow. That's kind of intense.
It is, and it's more important now than ever.
Yeah, I bet.
One of our sources actually mentioned a study that found that
Oh, really?
software vulnerabilities are now like the leading cause
Oh, wow.
of data breaches.
That's a pretty sobering thought. It is, yeah. Makes you realize that behind every app and website we use,
Yeah.
there's this whole hidden layer of security testing going on
Yeah.
to protect our data.
It's a big deal.
Okay, so we talked about security testing.
Yeah.
What about usability testing?
Okay, so usability testing.
Yeah, because at first glance, it kind of seems like it's just about aesthetics,
Right.
like making the software look nice.
Yeah.
But our sources are suggesting that it's
It's way more than that.
a lot more than that, right?
Sure. It's about understanding how real users
Okay.
are going to interact with the software.
Uh-huh.
It's about observing their behavior,
Okay.
identifying any points of confusion or frustration,
Okay.
and making sure the software is like intuitive and easy to use.
So it's about making sure things are clear
Exactly.
and logical and efficient.
It's about the flow.
Okay.
Yeah. So they actually like get people
Yeah.
to use the software and watch how they navigate it.
Yeah, they'll give them specific tasks to complete
Okay.
and see how long it takes them,
Uh-huh.
where they get stuck,
Uh-huh.
what kind of feedback they have.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very human-centered. It reminds me of that time I was trying to use that new photo editing app, and I spent like an hour just trying to figure out
Oh, no.
how to crop a picture.
I've been there.
Like, it was so unintuitive.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they had just done some
Yeah.
usability testing, they would have caught that.
Exactly.
Cannot.
Those are the kinds of things they're trying to prevent.
Right.
And, good usability
Yeah,
can really make or break a product.
for sure.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If an app is confusing or difficult to use,
Mm-hmm.
people are just going to abandon it,
Totally.
no matter how cool the features are.
Yeah, they'll just move on to something else.
Exactly.
Okay, so we covered security,
Yeah.
usability. What about performance testing?
Okay, so performance testing.
That's the one that comes to mind when I think of,
Yeah.
slow websites or apps that take forever to load.
Absolutely. It's all about making sure that the software is fast,
Okay.
responsive,
Uh-huh.
and stable
Yeah.
under different conditions.
Okay.
So it involves simulating different workloads,
Uh-huh.
testing the response times,
Okay.
and identifying any bottlenecks or performance issues.
One of our sources mentioned the statistic
Oh, yeah?
that a 1-second delay in page load time
Right.
can lead to a 7% reduction in conversions.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's just one example
Well-
of why performance testing is so important.
Yeah, that's huge.
Imagine like a retail website crashing on Black Friday
Oh, no.
because it can't handle the traffic.
That's a disaster.
That's a nightmare for a company.
Yeah, for sure.
So performance testing is really about making sure that the software can handle
Right.
whatever you throw at it.
The pressure.
Yeah, whether it's a sudden surge in users
Right.
or just the demands of everyday use.
Yeah.
And within performance testing, there are different types,
Okay.
like load testing and stress testing.
Okay.
So load testing focuses on how the software performs
Uh-huh.
under normal conditions.
Right.
And then stress testing really pushes it to its limits
Oh, wow.
to see how it handles those extreme workloads.
Okay, I'm starting to realize that non-functional testing is a lot more complex than I initially thought.
It's a whole world.
Like, there's so many different layers
Yeah.
and aspects to consider.
It's fascinating, though.
Yeah, it is interesting.
And it all comes back to this idea of like
Yeah.
making sure that the software doesn't just work,
Yeah.
but that it works well.
Right, it works well.
Yeah.
And our sources are making it clear that this isn't just about making things, like,
No.
nice for users.
No, it's not just about being nice.
Yeah.
It can have a real impact
Yeah.
on a company's bottom line,
Uh-huh.
their reputation,
Okay.
and even their security.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of security, actually,
Yeah.
one of our sources mentioned something
Okay.
that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
It was talking about how sometimes security measures can actually make software
What?
less user-friendly.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I guess I can see how, like, too many security steps or, like,
Mhm.
overly complicated passwords could
Yeah.
create a barrier for users.
It's a barrier to entry.
Yeah, and it's like you want the software to be secure,
Right.
but not at the expense of usability.
Right. It's a balance.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights how all these different parameters
Yeah.
of non-functional testing are all interconnected.
Yeah, it's not just like a checklist of isolated items.
Really?
It's about, like,
It's about the whole picture.
yeah, considering how they all work together.
Exactly.
Yeah, to create, like, a seamless,
Yeah.
positive user experience.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
That's great.
So our sources also talk about this concept of test cases.
Right.
Do you want to unpack that a bit?
Yeah, let's get into that.
So, from what I understand,
Yeah.
test cases are basically like
Yeah.
specific scenarios that testers use to evaluate the software. So, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a set of instructions.
Yeah, like a recipe.
Yeah, for testing a particular aspect.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, they outline the steps to be taken,
Okay.
the expected results,
Uh-huh.
the criteria for success.
Okay.
It's a structured, repeatable way to assess the quality.
One of our sources gives a few examples
Right.
that I think illustrate this really well.
Okay.
One of them says application load time should not be more than 5 seconds
Okay.
for up to 1,000 users accessing it simultaneously.
Right.
So that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's a classic performance test case.
Sure.
It defines what's being tested, which is the load time, the expected outcome,
Yeah.
which is under 5 seconds,
Right.
and the conditions under which it should be met,
Okay.
which is those 1,000 simultaneous users.
Right. So they would essentially like simulate that scenario
Exactly.
and see if the software passes the test.
Yep.
Another example focuses on compatibility. Software should be installable on all versions of Windows and Mac.
That's huge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's like,
Especially these days,
yeah,
where people are using so many different devices.
right, all different operating systems.
Compatibility testing is essential.
Yeah. It makes me think about all those times that I've like downloaded an app
Uh-huh.
or some software
Right?
only to find out it's not compatible with my system.
Ugh, I know.
Ugh, so frustrating.
The worst.
So, and that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah, there's test cases for everything.
Right.
Security, usability, scalability.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on what test cases are,
Yeah.
why they're important,
Right.
but our sources also emphasize that these are just like simple examples
Right. These are just the basics.
in the real world.
Yeah.
Test cases can get pretty complex, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
The complexity really depends on the software.
makes sense.
Like testing a simple calculator app is
Yeah.
going to be a lot less involved
Yeah.
than testing a complex banking system. Right.
Or like a video game with millions of users.
Yeah. Okay, that makes
So
sense.
the more complex the software,
Yeah.
the more complex the testing.
So the key takeaway here is that
Yeah.
test cases are really crucial
Yeah, they're essential.
for ensuring that software meets its non-functional requirements.
They're like a roadmap
Okay.
for testing and a benchmark for success.
So it's not just about like randomly poking around
Right.
and hoping for the best.
No,
There's a real science to this.
there's a method to the madness.
Yeah, and it all goes back to that idea of ensuring that the software doesn't just work,
Right.
but that it works well
Exactly.
under all sorts of different conditions.
All kinds of conditions, yeah.
It's about creating a smooth, reliable, and secure experience for the user.
That's what it's all about.
All right, as we kind of wrap up this first part
Yeah.
of our deep dive,
Uh-huh.
I have to say I'm looking at the software I use every day
Yeah.
in a whole new light.
It is kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's amazing to think about all the testing
Yeah.
that goes on behind the scenes
Right.
to make sure it's functioning at its best.
It's a whole world.
Now, I'm curious.
Yeah?
Our source is mainly focused on software,
Mm-hmm.
but do you think these principles of non-functional testing
That's a great question.
apply to other areas as well?
I think so.
What do you think?
I've been thinking about that too.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the core principles
Yeah.
of non-functional testing, like
Mm,
focusing on how well something performs,
right.
not just if it works,
Right.
could apply to so many things.
I'm intrigued. Like, what do you have in mind?
Well, think about it. Like,
Okay.
we don't just judge a car on whether it starts and drives.
Right.
We care about its fuel efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
the safety features, the
Mm.
comfort level, the handling.
Yeah.
Those are all non-functional aspects
Yeah.
that contribute to the overall driving experience,
That's a great analogy.
right?
And you could say the same thing about a lot of products.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like a piece of clothing isn't just about
Right.
covering your body.
Yeah.
It's about the fit,
Mhm.
the style,
The feel of the fabric.
the durability of the fabric,
Right.
or a kitchen appliance.
Yeah.
It's not just about whether it can like blend or chop.
Right.
It's about how well it does those things.
Yeah. How easy is it to clean?
How easy it is to clean, how long it lasts.
Exactly.
And it goes beyond physical products too,
It does.
like services.
Yeah, like a restaurant.
A restaurant isn't just about the food.
Right. It's the whole experience.
Yeah, it's about the ambiance.
The service, the
Well.
cleanliness.
Yeah.
Or healthcare provider.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about like diagnosing and treating illnesses.
Right.
It's about the quality of care.
Right. The communication, the empathy.
Exactly.
Wow, you're right. This idea of how well something performs
Yeah.
beyond just if it works,
Yeah,
applies to so many areas of life.
it really does.
It highlights the importance of considering.
These often overlooked aspects.
It's about the details.
Yeah, in everything we do,
You
whether
can't-
we're building software, designing products,
Providing services.
or even like honing our own skills.
Right.
It's about striving for excellence,
Absolutely.
not just functionality.
It's about going above and beyond.
That's such a powerful takeaway.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So listeners, as you go about your day,
Yeah.
I encourage you to pay attention to those non-functional aspects.
Yeah.
What makes a product or service or even a skill
Right.
truly stand out?
It's the little things.
Yeah, it's often those subtle but crucial details that make
Yes.
all the difference.
Absolutely.
And those details are often the result of,
Yeah.
careful thought and planning and testing, just like the software that we've been discussing.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Yeah, it's been great.
I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on not just software, but on everything.
Awesome.
So to wrap things up for our listeners today,
Okay.
what would be like the one key takeaway you want them to remember from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is
Okay.
don't underestimate the importance
Yeah.
of how well something performs
Right.
beyond just if it works.
Okay.
Whether it's software, a product, a service, or even a skill you're developing,
Yeah.
those non-functional aspects
Yeah.
can make all the difference.
Those little details.
Yeah, they elevate the ordinary
Yeah.
to the extraordinary.
Yeah, you're right.
And they create those truly exceptional experiences.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder
Yeah.
those non-functional aspects in your own life.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time
See you then.
for another fascinating exploration of
Absolutely.
the world around us.
Always more to explore. It's a whole system, you know?
Okay, so we talked about security testing.
Uh.
What about usability testing?
Okay, so usability.
Like, at first glance, it seems like it's just about aesthetics.
Yeah.
No.
Making it look pretty.
Yeah, making the software look nice.
Yeah.
But our sources are saying it's a lot more than that?
It's way more than that.
Right.
It's about how real users actually interact with the software.
Okay.
Like watching them use it,
Uh-huh.
seeing where they get confused or frustrated,
Right.
making sure it's intuitive, easy to use.
So, like, making sure things are clear,
Exactly.
logical, efficient.
It should just flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they actually, like, get people to use the software and watch how they navigate it?
They might give them tasks to complete
Oh,
and see how long it takes them,
Right.
where they get stuck, what kind of feedback they have.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a very human-centered approach.
That reminds me of that time I was trying to use that new photo editing app. And I spent like an hour. Oh, no.
Just trying to figure out how to crop a picture.
I've totally been there.
It was so unintuitive.
Yeah.
I was like, if they had just done some usability testing,
Right.
they would have caught that.
Exactly.
Come on.
That's exactly what they're trying to prevent.
Okay.
And good usability can really make or break a product,
I think so for
So,
sure.
like, think about it. If an app is confusing
Mhm.
or difficult to use,
Yeah.
people are just going to abandon it.
They'll just find something else.
Exactly, no matter how cool the features are.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so we've covered security,
Yeah.
usability.
What about performance testing?
Oh, performance testing.
That's the one that I think of when I think about like slow websites.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or apps that take forever to load.
Absolutely. It's all about making sure the software is fast,
Okay.
responsive, and stable
Uh-huh.
under different conditions.
Okay.
So they'll simulate different workloads,
Okay.
test response times, identify any bottlenecks or performance issues.
One of our sources mentioned this crazy statistic
Oh, yeah.
that a 1 second delay in page load time
Right.
can lead to like a 7% reduction in conversions.
I know, it's wild.
That's huge.
And that's just one example of why performance testing is so important.
It's a big deal.
Like, imagine a retail website crashing on Black Friday
Oh my gosh.
because it can't handle all the traffic.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
That's a disaster.
For sure.
So performance testing is making sure the software can handle
Right.
whatever you throw at it,
Okay.
whether it's a sudden surge in users or just the demands of everyday use.
Okay. That makes sense.
And there are even different types of performance testing,
Oh, like what?
like load testing
Okay.
and stress testing.
Okay.
So load testing focuses on how the software performs under like normal conditions.
Okay.
And stress testing really pushes it to its limits
Oh, wow.
to see how it handles extreme workloads.
Okay. I'm starting to realize that non-functional testing is a lot more complex than I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are so many different layers
It's a whole world.
and aspects to consider.
It's fascinating, though.
It is. It's really interesting.
And it all comes back to this idea of making sure the software doesn't just work,
Right.
but it works well.
It works well.
Yeah.
Our sources are making it clear that this isn't just about making things, like, nice for users.
Right. It's not just about being pretty.
Yeah.
It can really impact
Uh-huh.
a company's bottom line, their reputation, even their security.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of security,
Right.
one of our sources mentioned something I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
It was talking about how sometimes security measures
Mm-hmm.
can actually make software less user-friendly.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I can see how, like, too many security steps
Yeah.
or, like, overly complicated passwords
Yeah.
could create a barrier for users.
A barrier to entry.
Yeah, like, you want it to be secure,
Right.
but not at the expense of usability.
Right. You got to find that balance.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, for sure.
It shows how all these different parameters of non-functional testing
Yeah.
are all kind of interconnected.
Right. It's not just a checklist of, like, isolated items.
You know, it's holistic.
Yeah, it's how they all work together
Exactly.
to create that, like, seamless, positive
Exactly.
user experience.
It's the big picture.
Okay. I'm really starting to see the bigger picture here.
Awesome.
So our sources also talk about test cases.
Yeah, test cases.
Do you want to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Okay, so from what I understand,
Uh-huh.
test cases are basically like
Yeah.
specific scenarios
Right.
that testers use to evaluate the software.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a set of instructions.
Yeah, like a recipe.
Yeah, for testing a particular aspect of it.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay.
They outline the steps to be taken, the expected results, the criteria for success.
Uh-huh.
It's a structured and repeatable way to assess the quality.
Okay. One of our sources gives some examples
Right.
that I think illustrate this really well.
Okay.
One of them says application load time
Right.
should not be more than 5 seconds
Okay.
for up to 1,000 users accessing it simultaneously.
Okay.
So that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's a classic performance test case.
Okay.
It defines what's being tested, the load time,
Right.
the expected outcome,
Yeah.
which is under 5
Yeah,
seconds,
under 5 seconds.
and the conditions under which it should be met,
Right.
which is 1,000 simultaneous users.
So they would essentially like simulate that scenario
Exactly.
and see if the software passes the test.
Yep, exactly.
Another example focuses on compatibility.
Okay.
It says the software should be installable
Well,
on
yeah.
all versions of Windows and Mac.
Yeah, that's a big one,
Right.
especially these days
Yeah.
with so many different devices and operating systems. Compatibility testing is essential.
Yeah, it makes me think about all those times I've downloaded like an app or some software
Mm-hmm.
only to find out it's not compatible with my system.
Ooh, it's the
It's
worst.
frustrating.
By worse.
And that's just scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah, there are test cases for everything.
Right, for all these different parameters.
Security, usability, scalability, all of it.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp of what test cases are,
Yeah.
why they're important.
Yeah,
But our sources emphasize that these are just like simple examples.
right. These are just to illustrate the concept
Yeah, in the real world.
in the real world.
Test cases can get pretty complex, right?
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
The complexity depends on the software itself.
Right. That makes sense.
Like testing a simple calculator app
Right.
is going to be way less involved
Yeah.
than testing a complex banking system or
Right.
like a video game with millions of users.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the more complex the software,
Yeah.
the more complex the testing.
Okay, so the key takeaway here is that test cases are really crucial
Absolutely. They're essential.
for ensuring that software meets its non-functional requirements.
They're like a roadmap for testing
Okay.
and a benchmark for success.
So it's not just about like randomly poking around
Right. No, it's not random.
and hoping for the best.
There's a method to the madness.
There's a real science to it.
Exactly.
And it goes back to that idea of making sure that the software doesn't just work,
Yeah.
but that it works well
works well
under all sorts of conditions.
under all kinds of conditions.
It's about creating a smooth, reliable, and secure experience
Exactly.
for the user.
That's the goal. It really is a whole other world, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny because we always talk about wanting things to be user-friendly,
Right.
but I don't think we always stop to think about what that actually means.
It's more than just a buzzword.
Exactly, and what our deep dive today has really highlighted is that user-friendliness
Mm-hmm.
is often the result of like a lot of behind-the-scenes work It's about like anticipating problems, testing different scenarios,
Right.
and just making sure that the software is as like
Yeah.
smooth and reliable and secure as possible.
Thinking about the whole user experience
Yeah.
and how all those non-functional aspects kind of work together.
And it's not just about software either.
Right.
You had me thinking about this whole idea
Yeah.
of applying non-functional testing principles to like other areas of life.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier about how I've been trying to like improve my public speaking skills.
Right. You were saying you felt like you were getting the information across,
Yeah.
but not really connecting with the audience.
Yeah, and it kind of made me realize that maybe I need to think about like
Okay.
the non-functional aspects of my communication.
Interesting.
Like it's not just about the words I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
It's also about like my tone of voice,
Okay.
my body language,
Right.
my ability to like engage with the audience and respond to their cues.
That's a really good point.
And I'd never really thought about it that way before.
Yeah, it's like you're applying those usability testing principles
Yeah.
to your own communication style.
Yeah.
Like, are you engaging, are you meeting the needs of your audience?
That's a really helpful way to think about it. It's like a whole other level to communication that I hadn't really considered before.
But a whole other layer.
And it's not just public speaking either.
Right.
Like any skill you're trying to develop,
Yeah.
whether it's like writing or playing an instrument or even something like cooking,
Okay.
there are always those non-functional elements that can take you from good to great.
It's about the finesse.
Yeah.
The artistry.
It's not just about knowing the notes or the recipe. It's about like the artistry and the finesse and the ability to really like connect with your audience or your diners
Exactly.
on like a deeper level.
It's about the experience you create.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It's been fun.
I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on not just software,
Yeah.
but on like everything.
I love that.
So to wrap things up for our listeners today,
Okay.
what would be like the one key takeaway
The one key takeaway,
you want them to remember from this deep dive?
I think it would be this.
Okay.
Don't underestimate the power of how well something performs.
Yeah.
Beyond just if it works.
Okay.
Whether it's software, a product, a service, or even a skill you're developing.
Uh-huh.
Those non-functional aspects, they can make all the difference.
Yeah.
They elevate the ordinary to the extraordinary.
I do.
And they create those truly exceptional experiences.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder
Yes.
those non-functional aspects in your own life.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration
See you then.
of the world around us.
Always more to learn.